Past Progressive, Unit 6 of Grammar and Beyond 2. Past progressive describes actions as they were happening in the past. So when we use past progressive, it is almost like we are going back in time and telling what happened. So present progressive, which we learned a couple of weeks ago, describes an event as it is happening. The past progressive describes an event when it was happening. So the difference between simple past and past progressive is that in the simple past, you're standing in the present and talking about the past. This little guy here says, "Last night I walked in the park." But past progressive is like you're in the present, but you're pretending you were in the past, telling what you were doing. So this guy says, "Last night I was walking in the park." Now this page shows all of the ways that we can form past progressive. You have the affirmative statement, which is I was walking in the park. The negative is I was not running in the park. Yes, no question. Were you walking in the park? Short answer, yes, I was. Information question with the subject is, what was she doing in the park? The answer, she was walking in the park. She goes up to the first position as a subject. Was moves into second position right after the subject. Walking follows was. She was walking. The information question without a subject is, who was walking in the park? Alicia was walking in the park. You could just answer Alicia was, or Alicia was walking in the park. It doesn't matter. Remember, if you have an information question without a subject, the sentence stays the same except for the subject replaces the who. So instead of who was walking, Alicia was walking. So simple past and past progressive, what's the difference? The question, why do we use two different forms of the past if both of them are grammatically correct in most situations? Why would we even have two different ones? And I know some of you are asking that right now. The answer is past progressive does something that simple past can't do. It can show that two things were happening at the same time, or specifically, one event was in progress and another event happened. Okay? So simple past would say, I walked in the park, I saw a squirrel. But when you hear these two sentences, you don't know that they happened at the same time. They could happen at two different times in the past. But if we put that sentence into the past progressive, you get, while I was walking in the park, I saw a squirrel. The first part of the sentence, the while I was walking in the park, that's showing you that this was happening. I saw a squirrel happened while the other thing was happening. So using the past progressive just shows a relationship in the time that two things happen. Yep, while I was walking. Okay, so the question is, when should I not use past progressive? If both of them are correct, when should I not use them? So the answer is, if you're describing something that happened and ended quickly in the past, you usually don't use the past progressive. An example is, I tripped on a stick at the park. You wouldn't usually say, I was tripping on a stick at the park. You don't usually say that because it is very unlikely that something else happened while I was falling, because it is usually fast. So when you fall, it's a very fast event. You don't usually do something while you fall. So you can also use time clauses with simple past and past progressive, again, to show the relationship between two events. So you can put simple past and past progressive in the same sentence when you use a time clause with when or while. So this chapter just uses when or while for the time clause. While I was walking in the park, I saw a squirrel. while is the time clause. Was walking is the past progressive. And I saw is the simple past. So if you notice the first part, the past progressive, and then the second part is simple past. You can also use when. When I was walking in the park, I saw a squirrel. The time clause here, the when, is in when or while we use with the past progressive. The main clause is what your book calls the rest of the sentence, and that's in the simple past. The rule here is in a time clause, both when and while can be used with past progressive. And we have another example. So I was walking in the park when I saw a squirrel. If you notice, this main clause has the past progressive in it. The first example that we have, the main clause does not have the past progressive, it has the simple past. But this example here shows you that the main clause can have past progressive and the time clause can have simple past. But only when the time clause starts with when. So the rule is in a time clause, only when can be used with simple past. So that's a little bit difficult. You'll probably want to study that and take some notes just so you can get those rules straight in your head. The last part is you can also use time clauses with past progressive in questions. So what did you do while or when I was walking in the park? This is the time clause, the while or when with the past progressive. The main clause is what did you do? Remember, it's a question, so you have to have the did. Did you do? And was walking. Yep. Another question is what were you doing when I went to the park? In this question, the main clause, sorry, I read it wrong. It's were you doing homework when I went to the park? The main clause has the past progressive in it. Were you doing? And the time clause has the simple past. Went.